called The Nazis in Newark that was written with my help. A great guy, Warren Grover, friend of mine, wrote a book called The Nazis in Newark, which documents every war, every battle that took place between the Jews and the Germans. And I can assure you that the Jews came out winners in every one of those battles. Jews, by the way, there were a lot of prize fighters from Newark. We had a lot of guys. And I'll tell you a cute story. My father was partners with Hymie Kugel. My father was involved in prize fighting along with a lot of other activities. And the Newark had the Laurel Gardens had a very famous boxing arena. And sure enough, guys would fight, guys would box. And my father's partner was Hymie Kugel, who was the Jewish referee. Hymie Kugel, there's nothing objective about Hymie Kugel. If a Jew was fighting, he took good care of him. But a lot of guys fought under other names because they didn't want their parents to know that they were fighting. So one night there was a fellow by the name of Greenberg, and in the first round he got hit and knocked down. Now Hymie Kugel goes over to him and he says to him, listen, I'm going to give you what we call the Jewish count. And it goes like this. 1. He waited about a half an hour. 1.5. And then finally, out of desperation, he says to him, Schmuck, Greenberg, you dumb Jew, Afzaluchas, on purpose, I'm telling you, get off the canvas. I'm being kind to you because you're a dumb Jew. Greenberg looks up at Hymie Kugel and he says to him, what's this bullshit about being a kind Jew? He said, I'm not Jewish. My father's Italian and my mother's Irish. Hymie Kugel says, no shit. 7, 8, 9, 10, you're out. So there were prize fighters that fought, there were gangsters that fought, and they beat them up. And that book is a wonderful book, but also at the same time, up here in on Amsterdam and there was a German enclave up here, and I can't remember the section. Huh? Yorkville, right? Yorkville. Thank you. Who said Yorkville? Huh? I'm not gonna overcharge you on the book tonight. I was gonna overcharge you, but you saved yourself with that one. Meyer Lansky was contacted by Judge Perlman. Judge Perlman said to Meyer Lansky, see what your friend Longy is doing in Newark, New Jersey? I want you to go up to Yorkville and do the same thing to Fritz Kuhn. He's speaking up in Yorkville. I want you and your guys to take care of him. When Charlie Lucky Luciano heard what was happening, he went to see Meyer Lansky and he says, Meyer, I'll give you as many of my guys as you need. And Meyer Lansky, in his Jewish pride, he says, Charlie Lucky, thank you. I really appreciate that. But this is a Jewish problem, and it's going to be resolved with Jewish fists. He went up to Yorkville with a bunch of guys, and they slaughtered those guys. They slaughtered Fritz Kuhn. Same thing happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota. David Berman, Sam Taran, Herman Pastor, Yudi Bloom, all those Jewish gangsters in Minneapolis took on an organization that was known as the Silver Shirts. Did a fantastic job. Beat the living daylights out of those guys. And then Chicago, every city, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, Los Angeles, wherever there was, you have to remember that in the 1930s, we had a rising tide of Jew hatred on a high level. Charles Lindbergh, Joseph Kennedy, Father Coughlin. Any of you remember all these different stories? If not, I'm glad that I could tell you about it. So all over the United States, in Chicago, the guy that was the leader was Barney Ross. Barney Ross was a Triple Crown Jewish prize fighter, a champion, and a hero at Guadalcanal. An incredible human being, very dear friend of my father. And he and the guys in Chicago took on the silver shirts and took on the Ku Klux Klan and took on the Nazi movement in the United States. One of the guys that fought with Barney Ross, his name was Jacob Rubenstein. Does anybody recognize that name? Yes, sir. Jack Ruby. Very, very good. Jack Ruby was incredible. A Jewish hero fighting the American Nazi Party, the Silver Shirts, the Ku Klux Klan, and one of the other organizations that existed at that time in Chicago. That's right, Jack Ruby. The same one that was involved in the shooting of Lee Harvey Oswald, all right? Which, of course, always raised the question, what did the mob have to do as far as Kennedy is concerned? Okay, let's get on to the next subject. Next subject was in 1941, December 7th, 1941, we were attacked at Pearl Harbor. And Roosevelt declared war the next day against Japan, and the Axis 2 days later of Germany and Italy, they joined the forces of Japan, and we had now World War II. There was 2 months later, here in the Hudson River, there was a ship called the Normandy. It was a French ship that was commissioned by the United States Navy to be refitted to send troops to Europe to fight the war. We lost 150 ships, 150 commercial ships in the first 2 months of World War II. But interesting, the SS Normandy blew up in the port of New York and turned over. And this raised a very serious question. Who, how, what, when, where? There was a naval officer in charge of intelligence in Manhattan by the name of Charles Heffernan. Charles Heffernan reached out to Moses Polikoff. Moses Polikoff was the attorney to both Meyer Lansky and to Charlie Lucky Luciano. And he said, I want a meeting with your guy, Meyer Lansky. And met with Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky was a patriot. He said, of course I'll meet with him. He said, what's the problem? He says, the Normandy, the destruction of the Normandy, the blowing up of the Normandy, raises the question of sabotage and espionage. And we need the support of the longshoremen. But we don't know whether we can trust the longshoremen. 50% of the longshoremen are Irish. That means they could be anti-British. 50% are Italian. They could be pro-Mussolini. So Meyer Lansky's response at the time was, you're coming to me, but I'm not the guy that's got the power. The guy that's got the power is Charlie Lucky Luciano. However, Thomas Dewey, who was a special prosecutor going against organized crime in the 1930s, took down Dutch Schultz, took out Lefty Buchalter, took out Lucky Luciano. He framed, or it was alleged that he framed Lucky Luciano for promotion of prostitution, and that he was prosecuted and found guilty and was sentenced 30 to 50 years prison, New York State. They sent him all the way up. I can't remember the name of the prison. It was on the border with Canada. And so Meyer Lansky arranged with the United States government, with the approval of Thomas Dewey. It's known as Operation Underworld. And it's in a book written by a fellow by the name of Campbell. And it was a joint venture with the mob and with the Department of Navy that the United States government was never too proud to talk about. They didn't want to go public with this. Okay. So, Dewey ultimately agreed and had Lucky Luciano brought down closer to New York City. Meyer Lansky convinced Lucky Luciano that if you're going to use your influence with the longshoremen, which was under mob control, there's no deal on the table for you. It's going to be strictly an act of patriotism. You're either going to do it, you're not going to do it. But no deal is on the table. Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky convinced him to do it. And sent the message throughout the entire city of New York that we are now the eyes and ears for the United States of America. Longshoremen, bars, cigarette girls, pimps, prostitutes, everybody now is eyes and ears for the United States of America. There was no other incidents that took place after the war. A deal was worked out with Dewey that Lucky Luciano would be given a governor's pardon. The mob told Dewey through Moses Polikoff, we will throw our support behind you because you want to become the governor. People, you remember that Thomas Dewey, from governor, what did he want to become? The president. The mob threw its support behind Dewey. Dewey was elected, and he kept his word, except he made one exception. Lucky Luciano was not allowed to stay in the United States. He was deported back to Sicily, where he came from. That was Operation Underworld. People, I'm going to come to now, 1945, the war ends. But I want to go back to 1917. The British government, Lord Balfour, he was the foreign minister. He wrote a promise to the Jewish people that Her Majesty's government looks upon with favor the establishment of a Jewish state in the land of Palestine. Did the British government actually ever intend to fulfill that promise? Okay. In 1945-46, we think that in maximum population, I think there were only 600,000 Jews living in Palestine at that time. A lot of refugees, sick, bodily ill, survivors. And yet, David Ben-Gurion made up his mind that he was going to declare the state of Israel, knowing that we had absolutely not a pistol, a water pistol to shoot, not a BB gun, nothing. He sent several of his emissaries to the United States in pursuit of arms and weapons. There's a book called The Pledge. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the author, but it's the story of the massive cooperation, supply, weapons, and arms of the American Jews throughout the entire United States and foreign countries, including Nicaragua, which was Anastasio Somoza, who was the dictator, and Panama. Weapons and arms, airplanes, all illegal weapons and arms, because Truman, while he recognized the state of Israel 20 minutes after David Ben-Gurion made his declaration, and in defiance of his Secretary of State, General George C. Marshall, the creator of the Marshall Plan, Truman, the government of the United States, capitulated and invoked what was known as the 1939 Neutrality Act, which stated that the shipment of weapons and arms to Palestine, to either to the Jews or to the Arabs, was a criminal activity subject to imprisonment. Several of my father's friends went to jail and ultimately were pardoned by President Eisenhower, who was General Eisenhower. The most important factor was, how do we ship contraband? There was tremendous amount of excess, surplus, weapons, arms, and so forth that were brought up. Maybe even some of it was hijacked, stolen, or whatever the case may be. It was brought to the farmlands in southern Jersey. David Ben-Gurion had a friend by the name of Zemel Resnick. Zemel Resnick was a fellow soldier with David Ben-Gurion in the Jewish unit of the British Army in World War I. A lot of that stuff was buried, and now how to get it shipped. The Zionists went to Abner Weizmann and to Meyer Lansky and said, we need your friends that control the longshoremen again. So Meyer Lansky and Weizmann went to, there was no longer Lucky Luciano, he was no longer in charge. The two that were in charge was Frank Costello and Albert Anastasia, who was one of the three leaders of an organization that was known as Murder Incorporated. I got this nice lady over here. We had a nice conversation about her relatives. Anyways, it was the usefulness of the mob's connections to have the longshoremen supply weapons and arms that went to Palestine. How many of you nice people here recognize the name of Mickey Cohn? Oh, very nice. So Mickey Cohn was a gangster on the West Coast, and he was together with Benny Siegel, the mob bosses of Los Angeles. Mickey Cohn was a hard-ass gangster, but his heart was, he was a former prize fighter. He was a passionate Jew. He called a rally one night in a place called Slapsy Maxie's Comedy Club on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. And everybody was commissioned to come, ordered to come, commanded to come, raised money. The money that was raised that night, as it was told to me by the old-timers, was used to supply a ship called the Altalena. Does anybody here recognize the name of these two nice ladies here? And of course, our dear friend, the consul. The Altalena left the port of New York and went to Marseille, the port of Marseille, and it was transshipped from the port of Marseille to a little beach off of Tel Aviv called Beach Vitkin. And on Beach Vitkin, there was a dispute over the distribution of those weapons and arms, because this took place 2 months after David Ben-Gurion declared the state of Israel and we were at war. Ben-Gurion insisted everything come for the IDF. Menachem Begin was on the ship and sent the message, no, I want to preserve, this is an Irgun operation, and I need the weapons and arms to defend Jerusalem. I wasn't there, people. However, young man, are you listening? You. Yeah, you. I'm going to ask you questions afterwards, see if you're paying attention. Okay. Now, there was a dispute, and unfortunately, it ended in violence and tragedy. 18 or 19 Jewish boys were killed that night because Ben-Gurion ordered a missile to be fired on the Altalena. They saved Menachem Begin, who was the leader of Irgun, and he got on the radio that night and sent a message that there shall be no revenge. Jews do not kill Jews. And in reality, he saved Israel from a civil war, which if he didn't save it, that today would be probably no Israel. I started the evening off by telling you that there's a certain pride as far as the Jewish gangster is concerned. And I always said to myself, so if the patriot that fought for Irgun or for Lehi or for Haganah, if he was born and raised in the United States, that guy had the guts of a gangster. And the gangster guts, the same thing. Of course, we're not talking about the same objective. However, by telling you this little story tonight, a little history lesson, there was definitely a positive contribution, a major contribution of the mob. Now the mob, of course, when we talk about Irgun, and especially Lehi, everybody familiar with these two terms, Irgun and Haganah, Lehi, everybody? Okay, well, they were the paramilitaries, that existed before the creation of the State of Israel. And the Lehi was extremely right, Irgun was right of center, and David Ben-Gurion, Haganah, was left of center. They were basically the socialists. But in order to create the State of Israel, there was a need, and it was known, I think it's the Spring, where both Haganah, Lehi, and Irgun joined forces to really expel the British. The British gave up the question of Palestine and the mandate, turned it over to the United Nations. And today we have a State of Israel, thank God. Okay, people, tonight starts Yom HaShoah. It's the commemoration of the Holocaust. I'm going to tell the last chapter about myself. There's a very iconic picture from World War II, the Warsaw Ghetto. Maybe a lot of you have seen it. A little boy coming out, you know that picture. Does everybody know that picture? It's a Warsaw Ghetto. He's coming out of the Warsaw Ghetto, little short pants, and a Nazi soldier is holding a rifle to him. That was 1943. I was 5 years old in 1943. That little boy looked to me like he was 5 years old. I grew up always thinking somebody has to live his life. Somebody's got to do something. So I come from that world of the Jewish mob. I knew Meyer Lansky. I knew Longis Wellman. I knew Doc Stacher. I knew all of them. And I knew all the Italians as well. It's not something I'm bragging about. It's just stating a fact. But that's the world that I came from. And I only knew Jewish pride. They didn't know anything about religion. If you asked them if they believed in God, you get a slap for asking a silly question. All right? But Jewish pride, they understood Jewish pride. And that's where I came from. And so, in 1965, first time I was in Vienna, Austria, I'm married to a Jewish girl from Buenos Aires, whose family were lucky enough to escape the Holocaust. And I had a friend of mine, Joseph Remini. He was a Hungarian Jew that had escaped Budapest 1956 at the time of the Hungarian uprising. And I asked him to take me to see to see Simon Wiesenthal. He put me in a taxi cab. Go, you go. that was the beginning of a long and very meaningful relationship with Simon Wiesenthal. Knocked on his door. We talked for 3 hours. He was fascinated, American boy. Really, what's your connection with Holocaust? No. Yes, my wife's family, she never knew them. They were all wiped out in Poland. But the picture. He says, okay. I became very close with Simon Wiesenthal. Very, very close. And I used to go all over the world. I've been to 65 countries. I ran gambling from one end of the world to the other. He told me one time, you're going to Asunción, Paraguay. Yeah. I want you to go see a Jew in Asunción by the name of Louis Schumstein. Okay. And I want you to get whatever information you can about rumors of sightings of Mengele in Asunción, Paraguay. I could go to Asunción, take care of my business, call up Mr. Schumstein. Mr. Schumstein, I'm a friend of a friend from Vienna. He says, Gnig, red nicht mehr. Don't talk anymore. I'm going to give you an address. It's a cafe. You're going to meet me at this cafe. I go to meet him in a cafe, and he asks me a lot of questions. What are you doing? And so forth and so forth. He says, listen, this place is not a place to go around asking questions. This happens to be Asunción, Paraguay. The dictator of Paraguay is Alfredo Stroessner, the grandson of Germans, who is providing all kinds of protection for Nazi war criminals. He says there's only 1,000 of us living here in Asunción, and all of us are Holocaust survivors. Do us a favor. Go back to wherever you came from. Don't take care of your business, sell your slot machines, and if you need anything, I'll be here for you. But please, no more. That afternoon, I said, I understood. And I said, okay, I'm 100%. Go back to my hotel. My guys are going to pick me up that night. I get a phone call, and it's Mr. Schumstein. He's downstairs in the lobby, wants to talk to me. He says, I'm so impressed. He says, yes, there was some kind of a sighting. A month or 2 months later, I'm on a flight going from Asunción, Paraguay to Buenos Aires, and I sit down, and an elderly couple sit next to me, speaking Yiddish. Listen, it's a chaynych. Ich bin a Yiddische Boche, verstehe alles. Oh, really? You understand? Yes, of course, a little bit, you know. So who are you, and where you're from, and who do you know, and how much money you have, and what's your bank account, and so forth and so on. Well, okay. And I said, I'm a friend of Louis Schumstein. Oh, you know Mr. Schumstein. By the way, were you here a couple of months ago? Yeah. So you're the friend of our friend, who we call Akiva, from Vienna. Yes. A woman tells me a story. They own a dry goods store in the middle of Asunción, Paraguay, and one day she's there by herself. Door opens, and 3 Germans come in speaking German. And when she was in Auschwitz, she looks at oh my God, she froze. And realizing that she identified him, off they went, and that was it. Information, of course, went to Wiesenthal, but I'm sure that he had it from before. But I was very, very supportive of Wiesenthal. I think what the story that Ronan told today, each and every one of us, every one of you people that are here tonight, I love you, I admire you, I respect you, and I thank you. You came. You inconvenienced yourself to come. I hope that, you know, my story is an interesting